Thanks, Alana. Good afternoon, and you're welcome to the first of our lunchtime general election debates, with the candidates putting their name on the ballot paper in Mayo on Friday the 29th next. We're aware that at this point of up to 16 candidates contesting the 5-seater constituency of Mayo. We'll know the exact number after 5 o'clock on Saturday, and we hope to include all contenders in our lunchtime debates over the next 2 weeks. The candidates have opted to run. It's now up to you, the voter, to decide who you want to represent you in the 34th Dáil, and maybe learn a little more about the candidates here on Midwest News. In studio today we have the Minister of State for Trade Promotion, Digital Transformation and Company Regulation, Ballina-based Fianna Fáil candidate Dara Calleary. Ballina-based Councillor Mark Duffy, who's running under the Fine Gael banner and who just last June was successfully re-elected as an independent councillor on Mayo County Council. And Aontú candidate, Claremorris councillor, Knock-based Paul Lawless. Now, what candidates say during these debates is their responsibility. We ask each candidate to be courteous and not to speak over each other. And if any candidate persists, we'll simply cancel your microphone. So, gentlemen, please play fair. And you're all very welcome to our studio here in Ballyhonus, and we'll get started. Firstly, however, I want to acknowledge listeners' questions that have been pouring into our newsroom for the candidates, and we'll try to include as many as possible. It's not possible to include all of them, so apologies in advance for that. But to get the debate underway, we'll ask each candidate, in less than a minute, what's the single major issue for you ahead of polling day on the 29th, Minister Calleary?
So, Teresa, there are a lot of big issues. The big issue, though, the constant issue is housing, the availability of housing. There are nearly 2,000 new houses in Mayo since 2020. We provide 265 new social houses. We need to provide more. We need to provide more affordable homes. The pile-right scheme, we have to consistently work on that, increase the limits and resolve the issue around shared ownership. Also, 193 homes were refurbished. Existing social houses were refurbished, put back on the market. And through the Creek Conahay scheme, we're reopening properties in towns, in villages, all over the county. So housing
is your
providing
priority.
More affordable social and new rural planning guidelines.
Councillor Paul Lawless.
There are many issues coming up on the doorstep, from crime to health. But certainly the issue of housing and immigration, I think they're related as well, Teresa, are two of the biggest issues. Rents have doubled over the last 5 years and housing has become unattainable. And to build a one-off house is, particularly difficult. And these are the things that I want to work on to ensure that we have housing for our people. There is a homeless child living in Ballinrobe in the halfway house as we speak. A shocking indictment, and we need to ensure that children, and particularly children in homeless situation, are dealt with. And this is the first time we've had it in Mayo. We must tackle the housing crisis.
Okay, so again, housing. And Councillor Mark Duffy.
Teresa, housing is the number one issue. It comes up every time on the doorstep. It's affected everyone in County Mayo. Defective concrete blocks and the pyrite situation has had a devastating impact and effect on families right across the county. But we also see the scourge of vacancy and dereliction right across every town and village, and we need more supports like the Creek Conahay scheme to help support that. But we also need to remove the bureaucracy that's obstructing people building their one-off house, or whether it's developing larger scale housing developments in towns and villages. Social and affordable homes need to be developed at scale, at ambition, but there needs to be less bureaucracy to enable that to happen.
Okay, so housing very much to the fore, immigration there too. Now, to say the least, there's mystery over the future of the old secondary school in Ballina. According to the Department of Children and Integration, they say the former St Mary's School isn't under consideration to house international protection applicants. However, then there's a planning application submitted to Mayo County Council that clearly states the contrary, that it is intended to use the school as a temporary accommodation for displaced persons. Now, lots and lots of questions coming in on this for all of the candidates, but can any of the candidates here shed any light on the issue, as I say, exercising the mind of so many among the electorate, and again the possibility of a hotel in Crossmolina being repurposed as potentially a temporary accommodation for refugee or asylum seekers. Can we clarify any of this, Minister Calleary?
So in relation to the old St Mary's, there's a planning exemption application from a property developer who's acquired the property. I have asked the department for clarification in relation to the specific property, and certainly as of Monday evening there was no application from anybody in relation to that particular property.
Well, explain the second part then, that Mayo County Council, that there is an application in to use the school as a temporary accommodation.
So, look, the developer has made an application for planning exemption, and I can only deal with what I've got back from the department. They have no specific inquiry in relation to that property. The developer is acting independently of IPAS at the moment, but I have asked the department to keep me absolutely informed if any further application comes into them. I've been speaking to residents; they're genuinely concerned. And yes, I'm frustrated at the lack of information, but I'm...
Well, do you want to see it developed in this way?
No, I don't think it's an appropriate site. That was a school, a very successful school. The building isn't in very good condition, and I think it's, repurposing a school that had a lot of challenges as a building isn't a site for accommodation. And there are issues in the area as well that need to be dealt with.
Okay, Mark Duffy, you raised this with us a number of days ago. Your concern, are you clearer on what's happening here?
Well, I've tried to seek as much information as possible. When the information was shared with me on Thursday, I immediately contacted the Taoiseach's office to get clarification if this was factual in terms of the application or any interaction with IPAS. But it is an application that has been made by a private building owner. Anyone can make a planning application in the county for a building, but IPAS...
So there's a plan?
IPAS through the Taoiseach's office have confirmed that there's been no consultation with it. Obviously there's a plan because the planning application went into Mayo County Council by a private developer, but it's not something that I support. I've made that clear, and it's not something that I believe IPAS have any interest in either. So that's the clarification.
Just to say, when the developments were happening around the Twin Tree in Ballina, listeners have said that both yourself, Mark, and Dara, that you, said that you supported such facilities. Have your stance changed?
This building is a school. It's never set up as a large accommodation centre. So, in relation to this specific project, I don't support it.
Okay, and Mark, has your stance changed?
I've always said that I don't support since this broke last Thursday.
But you did earlier with the
in
Twin
relation
Tree.
To the secondary school, when the Ukraine invasion by Russia began, I had proposed at that moment that it would be suitable at that stage. But Ballina has, had its share in terms of...
So you don't think so anymore?
So I don't believe at this stage.
Okay, Councillor Paul Lawless, you've been on record as, saying that you want better infrastructure anywhere and more information when there are even the proposals like these on the table.
The first thing, I think it's incredible dancing around the issue that's going on here. The big issue here is the fact that this government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, introduced the planning circumvention. These parties essentially ensured that the people of Ballina would be kept in the dark, and everyone knows what a Section 5 is, Teresa. This is a planning application for an IPAS
A Section
centre.
5 means you can develop it without having to say exactly what you're developing.
This is the point I'm making. A Section 5 essentially allows the developer to put in an application to apply for the legislation that these guys implemented in terms of this circumvention. The loophole was introduced for IPAS developers, and this is very, very important because we talk about consultation, but the legislation is actually ensuring that there is no consultation for the people of Ballina. And the fact is that I have received confirmation from an official who has stated that the developer
an
is
official
actually
where,
in the council, who has stated that the developer is engaging through a third party with the department. This is not for a hotel. Can I just finish? This is not for a school or a swimming pool. This is for an IPAS centre, and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are in charge. And the crucial thing here is that we must end the planning circumvention. This is really, really important.
Okay, that is important, but it's also important that we find places to put people if they're homeless.
We cannot have consultation while this Section 5 circumvention is allowed to prevail, and I think it's really important that this is removed immediately, that we're clear and honest with the people. And the other thing to say is this application is actually due for decision on the 2nd of December, a week after the election.
Okay. Dara?
I think, Teresa, it's important that we move to a more centralised system of accommodation. People are coming in record numbers. We have to get tougher. We have to get quicker in terms of dealing with asylum applications. And we are setting up more centralised centres, for instance, Thornton Hall, to deal with that and move away from using smaller communities. And that is a plan in government if we are returned. We're actually setting up a Department of Domestic Affairs to take charge of this issue. It is a major issue for this government. It only came on our desks over the last couple of years, the kind of numbers we have.
Yeah, but it has to be reacted to immediately.
We're moving towards a more centralised approach to accommodation in bigger centres, more quick turnaround. But also it's important that we encourage legal migration, people with skills to come in and work in our country.
Okay, with that we'll take a break. We'll be back after the break with our three panellists. Please join us. And you're welcome back to our election debate. In studio, Councillor Paul Lawless, Minister of State Dara Calleary and Councillor Mark Duffy. Now, gentlemen, fear that US-based multinationals, of which there are many in Mayo, may shift investment as well as some of their operations back to the United States in light of Donald Trump's victory last week in the US. How worried are you, Minister, about that?
Look, you have to be concerned anytime there's a new president. There will always be a change of policy. And he is certainly saying he's going to be more protectionist. But in Mayo, we've an incredibly skilled workforce in Hollister, in Coke, in Lionbridge, or in Taliesin Ballina, in Baxter, in Abvey. It is the skills that are the key thing here. It is very complex manufacturing that we have in Mayo. We can do that because of the skills of the Mayo workforce, and you will not be able to replicate those skills.
So do you believe that the President-elect, that he's really only talking, that it's not going to happen, that the companies themselves will make the decision?
Upping their operations. And I can certainly guarantee people, if I'm re-elected and if I'm lucky enough to be back in government, I'll be defending Mayo business, not just our multinationals or small indigenous businesses too, but we will be working hard. Our teams in Washington, our IDA teams will be working hard to make sure that we are ready for any change of policy, that we have the skills in place, that we have the investment in place. And we have done that over the last 5 years. It's been extraordinary 5 years of turbulence in the country or in the world. Employment in Mayo companies and Mayo multinationals has actually increased. That's a testament to the fantastic workforce we have.
Okay, Mark Duffy, are you concerned about President Trump's election and its potential impact on multinationals in Mayo?
I met with President Trump in 2018 in Washington, and he spoke very highly of Ireland, but let us all be clear, we know that he is America first and that is all that he is concerned with. I think that the business and the FDI that's in Mayo in particular is very resilient. We see an example where Coca-Cola performed as one of the best plants in the world in terms of reducing energy consumption and improving their efficiencies within their operation. We have a highly skilled workforce. We need to do whatever we can to protect FDI within the county and support local family-owned businesses as well. We've got to watch the back door for sure, but I think that we perform very well and very strongly in terms of productivity, and I have confidence
and
that
you're
we
not
can
afraid.
grow that. I have every confidence in the Irish workforce to be as effective and efficient to deliver.
Councillor Lawless?
For sure, Teresa, it is a major concern, and I think it does highlight the fact how over-reliant we are in the FDI sector. I mean, if we adopted the same policies and strategies that we adopt for the FDI sector to the SME sector, which is the backbone, the biggest employer, we would certainly be in a good place. I mean, we need to build on the Irish enterprise sector. We need to ensure, and this is the sector that isn't as mobile, it's more sticky, and it's less susceptible to move in international events. So I think it's really
fearful?
I think it's really important that we actually relook at our own offering to SMEs in terms of supporting entrepreneurship, tax breaks and so on. Like, the thing here, we have done incredibly well from previous generations of politicians who adopted a pro-FDI attitude, and I think that is now the sector we need to ensure. We don't need to wait 5-10 years down the line to more protectionist leaders potentially around the world. We need to start the policy now of supporting the SME sector, the Irish indigenous sector, that will be here irrespective of international events.
Minister Calleary.
I absolutely agree with Paul, but we are supporting our SMEs, and we'll be providing further support through the local enterprise office, through Power Up, the grant scheme which is currently being paid out, through the increased cost of business. And I want to see further schemes to assist our town centres, as I said, through Creeconahe, assist that in to revitalise our town centres, support our smaller enterprises to digitalise so they face up to international competition, stand with small business. But without our multinational sector, they employ the guts of 5,000 people in Mayo. We wouldn't have small business either.
We'll move on. Rural Ireland has been further neglected by the last government. This is from a listener. You impose zero tolerance on alcohol and driving. Fair enough, but you put no transport infrastructure in place in rural regions that have left people feeling socially isolated. What will you commit to do about social isolation, the reality for many living in rural areas that can no longer go to their local pub. Mark Duffy, what's your view there? What would you be able to commit to?
I will definitely commit to supporting better connectivity right across County Mayo. We've got a brilliant county and something I've advocated strongly for is the rollout of the Connetha scheme, which is bringing life back into rural
but transport,
Ireland. No, but people need to live in rural Ireland first to then
they do, but they need to be able to get out from their house.
The population and improve life back in to rural Ireland. In terms of connectivity, the local link has been a very positive example of connectivity right across the county, but that needs to be expanded, more resourced and improved.
And
but
would you be committing to that though? Like, would you put a time frame on it, or do people stay in isolation for many years?
No, there has been improvements, but there needs to be more. But also in terms of regulation, in terms of taxi share and ride share, it needs to be less bureaucratic to make sure that if I go from Knock Airport over to Portugal, Uber is there, and it's a very good model in terms of inexpensive and helps you connect right from your airport to your hotel.
Sure.
That's a low cost and effective way to help improve connectivity in rural Ireland. I think it's something that should be looked at.
Paul, your view on that?
I think social isolation, particularly in rural parts of Mayo, is such a major concern. I spoke to a publican recently who actually dispenses the eye drops to his elderly customer. That's the institution that the Irish pub is. And, you know, a pint drank in the Irish pub is a healthier pint. And we support the reduction of the 9% VAT rate. We want to see a reduction of excise duty.
How will you get people to the pub? Not to the pub, but to anywhere at night?
Well, look, pubs are closing right across the country and people are now drinking at home. We need to address this issue. This is actually the nub of the issue of rural and social isolation. We need
what are Aontú promising?
We are going to reduce the VAT rate. We are going to reduce the excise rate. We need to ensure the pubs are viable. They're closing. Right, there's one coffee shop in this town, for example. You know, the coffee shops right across Mayo wanted to see a reduction of VAT. It hasn't happened. It's been promised now on the eve of the election, Teresa. And these pubs and restaurants are crucial to addressing rural isolation. And on the issue of transport, and people need to get there, and we want to see the more public transport. And until that is delivered in Mayo, we will remove the carbon tax as well, because it's unfair to offer a punishment to people when the alternatives are not there.
Minister Calleary?
Look, I favour expansion of local link. I think they've done a wonderful expansion over the last number of years in Mayo. I want to see more late night services. Secondly, you know, I've engaged with taxi people over the last number of months about their industry. Their industry hasn't recovered from COVID. I think we'll have to look at a minimum payment to get taxis back out on the road, particularly at night, so they can get people to and from places. But definitely it's through local link, through late night local link. But we are very lucky we have a super local link in Mayo.
Okay, we've only got through a fraction of the questions that came in and our time has run out, really. In the last less than a minute again, I'm going to ask each candidate, what do you see as your greatest achievement to date for County Mayo as an elected representative? Mark?
Improving connectivity from Mayo to Dublin has been something that I've been advocating for, and I was successful in achieving and delivering the early morning rail service to County Mayo that has connected in people for work and appointments from Mayo to Dublin, but also evening connectivity. And like I said, the Connetha scheme was initially announced for populations of over 600 people.
Okay, it was one achievement. I know you may have many,
right
but
across
one
County
achievement.
Mayo. And that's
right.
what I'm looking forward to furthering, if I am given the chance by the people, to have a national mandate to deliver for the people of County Mayo.
Okay, Minister Calleary, your greatest achievement to date for the county?
I'm really proud and I'm really excited about what I've achieved for Ballina Hospital and for Belmullet Hospital. We're going to rebuild Ballina Hospital. We're going to start next year by opening a minor injuries unit similar to Roscommon. That'll take pressure off Castlebar, take pressure off Sligo, and we're working on the same journey with Belmullet. I had to fight incredibly hard to do that against officialdom. I landed it and I will see it both hospitals through. Okay,
and finally, Paul, your greatest achievement to date for the county?
One of the things I'm particularly pleased with is the fact that I've helped hundreds of people across Mayo get off waiting lists. I didn't wait to be elected, Teresa, to do it. I've done it for the last 5 years, helping hundreds of people who would otherwise have gone blind, people who essentially were, given back their independence to whether that's to read or their hobby of sewing and knitting or driving and so on. And that's the type of proactive solutions I want to bring. And I do want to establish, if I'm elected, I will ensure that we broaden the scheme, the cross-border scheme, to ensure that we have information and logistics hubs in every county in this country. And we ensure that nobody is left years waiting for cataract or any other procedure, Teresa, because it's really, really important that we have a short-term and a medium and a long-term solution to this housing crisis.
Time has caught up with us. Thanks to Mark, to Dara and to Paul. Thanks for listeners' questions. Sorry not able to get to the wall today, but more election debates to come, and the next is on Friday lunchtime when I'll be joined in studio by Minister Alan Dillon, Deputy Rose Conway Walsh and Stephen Kerr.